At Computex 2024, when we checked out what Corsair had to offer, we saw a brand new case called the 3500X, and this case is Corsair's attempt to be a lot more aggressive with their pricing. Let's see if the 3500X is worth your hard-earned money.
This video is brought to you by VIPSCDKey.com. Have you ever installed Windows 11 only to see the watermark of death? You don't need to fork out a couple of $100s for a key. You can grab one from today's video sponsor, from VIPSCDKey.com for 1/10 of the price. You can use our code GEAR to get 30% off for this month only. How good is that? That takes that already cheap Windows 11 key and makes it even cheaper. It's easy as placing your order. Bingo bango. You've got your new key on your orders page. You chuck that key into the activation screen and you're good to go. No more watermark of death. Use code GEAR to get 30% off for this month only. Link in the description. On with the video. Back to you, Nick.
All right, Bindi, let's start off with some panel removal. First of all, you want to put your fingers in the edge of this panel here for the TG side panel and then pull it towards you, and then you can lift it away from the case. And Bindi didn't like that sound. Next, we'll want to remove the front tempered glass panel. This one also pops out. You can just pull that towards you and lift that away from the case. Next, we want to remove the back panel. There's another notch that's cut out on the back edge. Put your fingers in there, pull that towards you, and then you can lift it away from the case. Finally, we'll want to remove the top panel for the case. There's a little lip on the back of the case. You can use 2 thumbs to push that up, and then you can lift the top away from the case. There's also 2 screws that don't do anything. You take them out and it doesn't allow you to change any part of the case. Why are these here? Please inform me. For dust filters, there's a magnetic dust filter on the top of the case. On the side, there's another magnetic dust filter for intake. Lastly, there's another dust filter that runs the entire length of the bottom of the case. It's absolutely huge. For hard disk and SSD support, the 3500X supports 4 drives. Let me show you how Corsair has done this. I actually think this is pretty interesting. So essentially, you remove this bracket here. On the back side of the bracket, you can do 2 2.5-inch SSDs. I've mounted one here just to show you guys how it works, but you can mount that spinning RAS drive on the other side. So if I flip it over, you can see SSD, spinning RAS drive, then you can hook the bracket back into place and you've got, let's say, 4 drives installed. This is a pretty elegant solution. It's time for everyone's favorite test, the flex test. But before we continue, I spoke to one of the Corsair case designers about the 3500X at Corsair about how bad the case flex was on the 6500X. And they said it was to do with them testing in a wind tunnel or like some crazy thing that I just didn't believe. Let's see if they made the 3500X better. My criticisms of the 6500X have now been sorted. This is not that flexy. Basically, the whole case is lifting up, which is why you're seeing it moving. And it's not that bad. Good work, Corsair. I also wanted to mention, every time I said, oh, the case company listened to me, people get so offended about that. But the reality of doing what we do is the case manufacturers do listen to the things I say. Whenever we make a video, they find out when you find out what I dislike about stuff too. So yeah, that's how we keep it real. For power supply support, the 3500X has a maximum supported length of 180 millimeters. For fan and radiator support on the 3500X, on this side section here, we can do up to 3 120mm fans, or you can do 2 140mm fans, and you can do up to a 360mm radiator, or a 280mm radiator, 240, and so forth. You get the idea. On the bottom, you can do either a 120mm fan or a 140mm fan. On top of the PSU shroud, you can do 2 120mm fans as intake. Up top, you can do 3 120mm fans, 2 140mm fans, up to a 360mm radiator, or even a 280mm radiator and 240, so forth. And on the rear, you can do a single 120mm fan. As for cable management, on the bottom of the case, you'll notice there's a few little cable raceways and channels. There's one here for fans in case you're installing a fan at the bottom of the case. There's a little cable channel on the rear edge of the case, so you can pass your EPS power cable up and through to the top where you would plug it in for your motherboard. There's lots of little cable tie down points on the back side of the motherboard tray. You can see there's heaps of them all around the place. There's one where you would typically run your power cable, and they're also on the edge of where that fan bracket is. And lastly, there's cable tie downs on the back of the case, because what we've seen as a bit of a trend this year is case manufacturers want you to run your cables together and down and in one trunk down at the back of your case. But one thing I noticed is Corsair also allows you to pass cables from the outside of the case in through this little hatch at the top. For motherboard support, the 3500X supports boards from ITX all the way up to ATX. As well as that, the 3500X also supports motherboards with back connectors, so Project Zero and BTF. And this is the Z790 Tough Gaming BTF. And you can see that it fits in there very, very nicely. Now, as far as EATX board support, I guess you could do it if you really wanted to, because all it would do is cover over a part of the fans on the side here, and then you could route the cables through to the side anyway. But I wouldn't recommend doing it, but if you really wanted to, yeah, you could. For air cooler support, the maximum supported height is 170 millimeters. For GPU support, the 3500X supports GPUs up to 410 millimeters. This is the PNY 4070 Ti Super, and you can see this card is pretty large for a 4070 Ti Super, and it gives you a good indication of just how much space you have, and there's quite a bit. You can also vertically mount in this case, and the way it works with Corsair cases is you can rotate the rear I/O. So basically, you remove these 3 screws, and then you rotate the bracket, and you lose one slot as you push it back in, but this will then allow you to vertically mount your GPU. As for the case wiring, we've got a USB 3.2 Type A cable, a USB Type C cable, there's the front panel audio cable, and the front panel connector for your lights and your switches so that you know your system's up and running, and to turn the thing on. On the top panel, there's a power button with a combined power light, 2 USB Type A ports, a USB Type C port, a headphone and microphone jack, and a reset button. That's everything I think you need to know about the Corsair 3500X for now. Let's do our usual thing. Let's do a build, we'll test the thermals, and then I'll let you guys know if the 3500X is worth the $90 US they're asking. And the reason why I'm talking about the price nice and early in the video is because Corsair is trying to be a lot more aggressive with their pricing. All right, let's take a look at the thermals. What you're seeing on your screen right now is the thermals aren't too bad. There's about a 3-degree temperature delta with the CPU from when the panels are completely off and when they're all on with the filters. And to be honest, I'm quite surprised that the thermals are the way they are. Remember though, our ambient temperature here is around 18 degrees, which is lower, but also at the same time, we have a climate controlled studio, and that's just how it is. Also, there is a reason why the thermals are a bit lower for some design reasons, which we'll jump into in a moment. But as far as all the hardware used in this PC build and this review, there's a PC part picker list down below if you want to know what it all is. There's also little cards on the screen when those sections occur to show you what all the hardware is. Okay. What do I think about the Corsair 3500X? Well, this is a bit of an interesting case from Corsair, mainly because it is a fish tank case, but it's not a dual chamber case. I hope this is making sense to you. Typically, dual chamber cases, which Corsair invented by the way, have power supplies on the backside of the motherboard tray. This one has it in the basement in a typical type of layout. The reason is because dual chamber cases are much wider, and I think Corsair has tried to reduce the width of the footprint and just make it like a typical mid-tower size case. And that's really what we're seeing with the 3500X. It is a normal size mid-tower case. But as far as the design, there is something new, and one of Corsair's case designers explained this to me. I don't know how true this is, but I'm basically going to echo exactly what was told to me. Corsair was experimenting with new designs for the holes on their case, and they used to have the triangle design. Now they've got this, I don't know what it is, it's like a Y design, I suppose. And apparently this design allows for 5% more airflow. I'm not sure how true that 5% difference is, but the reality is if you take into account the shape and how much area it opens up, it could be believed. But yeah, to be honest, we don't know, and we won't really ever know because we don't have the 3500X with the old mesh panel design. So there's no way of really knowing. But when you look at it, it does look a lot more open. So there is that. In terms of other design aspects like the vertical GPU mounting now, I think Corsair has listened to a lot of feedback from people because the last case that they did, you needed to buy a Corsair bracket for vertical GPU mounting, and now you can just rotate the whole rear bracket and use whatever riser cable you like, which is a very nice touch. So good work to Corsair for listening to what we want. The other thing is building in this case, especially with the BTF board, was really, really easy. I had no issues with it. In fact, look at the cable management here. I didn't really even try to do anything fancy with the cable management. This is just how it is when you build with the 3500X. I also noticed on that SSD and hard disk mounting sled, there's a cutout for where the new IQ control box fits perfectly, and it holds it into place. Even though it's magnetic, it just holds it a little bit tighter, and I think that's a nice little touch too. I think one of the things that's missed with a lot of cases is when they have their own RGB controllers that are optional, there's no place to put it. I guess the main question is, what other options are there in this price range and this case category? Well, like I said, this is a fish tank case that's not dual chamber. We've got cases like the Antec C3, which are comparable in price and features. We've also got other things like the XT series from Fantex, which is quite competitive with the pricing too. And now Corsair, which is coming in at $90 in the same type of fish tank case category. The main thing being, some of those other cases that I mentioned include fans, whereas this one doesn't. There is a variant that does come with fans, but this is the bottom of the barrel base version of the case. So $90, I've got to say it, I think Corsair's finally doing something that they did with the 4000D, and that's bring the prices down for their mid-tier cases. The 3500X has better build quality than something like the 6500D and the 6500X that launched earlier in the year, which is a much more expensive case. So it looks as though Corsair is properly moving in the right direction when it comes to the quality of their cases. However, there are a couple things that are still missing from this case. First of all, it's nice that you can rotate the bracket, but how about just not giving us the horizontal support so we can just use any other vertical GPU bracket? I get that Corsair tries to make their own ecosystem when it comes to cases, and they try and make it as easy as possible, but by making it as easy as possible, you also can make it more difficult at the same time. There's that too. As well as that, the design of the case is something that we've seen quite a few times from other manufacturers, but again, everyone's kind of doing the whole fish tank glass box thing, so we're not really seeing anything different here from Corsair. But what we're seeing is the case is less flexible than the 6500D and the 6500X. It's more rigid, and I know it really doesn't matter because people aren't trying to flex their cases, but for someone like me who looks at this stuff every single day, it is good to see that there's little things that they're doing to make their cases better. The cable management in this case is way better than anything they've done in a long time. And it's not anything groundbreaking. It's just where they've decided to put stuff like tie downs and that kind of stuff for cable management. So again, Corsair I think has done a fairly decent job on the design of this case. And it's very difficult to tell what a case is really like when we're at things like Computex because we haven't built with it. Let us know what you think of the Corsair 3500X. I know that people are going to say, hey, it's just copying like another case or whatever. Guys, we can only go as far as we can with glass boxes, and that's the reality of it. It's up to companies to make their take on these type of cases. And I think that the 3500X may be popular because the price point is not terrible. $90 US for a case of this build quality and this compatibility, it's really not that bad. And it looks really good with the back connector motherboard. If you like the music you heard here, I make all the music. It's available by clicking the join button right down there down below. Once again, thank you so very much for watching. You know the thing, I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. You peek, we seek. And yeah, I think Corsair's done a fairly decent job with this case. I was kind of unsure about it when I saw it at Computex, but after pulling it apart and seeing what makes it tick, it's not too bad. The only problem I have is, what are those two screws in the bottom doing? What are they there for? Anyways, we'll catch you later. Maybe you can watch one of the other reviews of cases we've got floating around.